John Stark's extraordinary youth, captured by the Abenaki, but forged into a revolutionary hero. What if one of America's greatest Revolutionary War heroes first learned the art of survival from the very people who captured him? Long before John Stark became the legendary general who helped secure America's independence, he was simply a young frontiersman searching the wilderness of colonial New Hampshire. In the spring of 1752, during a fur-trapping expedition through the White Mountains, his life changed forever. An Abenaki war party suddenly surrounded him. Outnumbered and with no chance of escape, Stark was taken captive and marched hundreds of miles into the Canadian wilderness. Most prisoners never survived what came next. Upon arriving at the Abenaki village, Stark was forced to endure the terrifying ritual known as running the gauntlet, where warriors lined both sides of a narrow path, striking prisoners with clubs as they ran. But John Stark refused to surrender. Instead of accepting the punishment, he seized a warrior's club and fought back with fearless determination. His extraordinary courage shocked everyone watching. Rather than executing him, the Abenaki chief admired Stark's bravery and adopted him into the tribe. During the months that followed, he learned their language, customs, wilderness survival skills, tracking techniques, and guerrilla warfare tactics. These priceless lessons transformed him from an ordinary frontiersman into one of the most capable military leaders in colonial America. Years later, when the American Revolution erupted, those same skills gave Stark a decisive advantage over British commanders trained in traditional European warfare. His deep understanding of forests, ambush tactics, and frontier combat would help him achieve some of the most remarkable victories of the Revolutionary War. John Stark's incredible journey reminds us that greatness is often born through hardship. The experience that seemed destined to destroy him instead forged the courage, wisdom, and resilience that would help shape the future of the United States. What do you think? If you had faced the same trial as John Stark, would you have fought back or surrendered? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe to Age Uncovered for more fascinating documentaries about forgotten heroes, legendary battles, and the remarkable events that changed world history. Rogers Rangers, the frontier officer who chose honor over orders. What would you do if your commanding officer ordered you to attack the very people who had once saved your life? Would you obey without question, or sacrifice your military career to protect your conscience? That impossible choice transformed John Stark into one of the most respected heroes of the American Revolution. After being ransomed from the Abenaki in 1753, John Stark returned to frontier life. When the French and Indian War erupted in 1755, he joined the legendary Rogers Rangers, an elite frontier force often considered the predecessor of modern American special operations units. Unlike regular soldiers, the Rangers specialized in scouting, surprise attacks, wilderness survival, and long-range patrols deep behind enemy lines. Stark quickly earned a reputation for exceptional courage, sharp leadership, and unmatched knowledge of the frontier. Promoted to captain, he fought around Lake George and Lake Champlain, becoming one of Britain's finest frontier officers. Then came the greatest test of his character. In 1759, General Jeffrey Amherst ordered Rogers Rangers to attack the Abenaki village of St. Francis, the very village that had adopted Stark after his capture and treated him with kindness years before. Most soldiers would have obeyed. John Stark refused. Rather than betray those who had once saved his life, he resigned his commission. It was not fear that drove him away, it was honor. His decision demonstrated extraordinary integrity, gratitude, and moral courage. History later proved how tragic that campaign became, with many women and children losing their lives. Meanwhile, Stark returned home, married Elizabeth Molly Page, and spent more than 15 peaceful years as a farmer. But destiny had other plans. When the first shots of the American Revolution rang out at Lexington and Concord in 1775, John Stark answered the call once again. He returned not only as an experienced soldier, but as a leader whose honor inspired absolute loyalty. Sometimes the greatest victories begin long before the battlefield. They begin with a single decision to stand by one's principles, even when the cost is everything. What do you think? If you had been in John Stark's position, would you have obeyed the order or chosen honor instead? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Hero of Bunker Hill, the patriot who walked away rather than accept dishonor. What happens when one of your nation's greatest battlefield heroes is rewarded not with recognition, but with humiliation? For John Stark, the answer was simple. He chose honor over rank. Yet the man who walked away from the Continental Army would soon return to deliver one of the most decisive victories of the American Revolution. When the first shots of the Revolution echoed across Lexington and Concord in April 1775, John Stark did not hesitate. Without waiting for official orders, he gathered volunteers from New Hampshire and marched toward Boston, determined to defend the Patriot cause. His reputation as a fearless frontier commander quickly earned him command of the 1st New Hampshire Regiment. His first great test came at the Battle of Bunker Hill on June 17, 1775. While most American commanders focused on defending the main redoubt, Stark recognized that British General William Howe would likely launch a flanking attack along the narrow shoreline of the Mystic River. Acting on instinct and years of frontier experience, he ordered his men to build defensive positions extending all the way to the water. His prediction proved exactly right. As British light infantry charged along the beach, Stark's regiment waited with extraordinary discipline until the enemy reached a predetermined marker. Then they unleashed devastating volleys of musket fire that shattered the British assault. Wave after wave of professional soldiers fell before the determined New Hampshire militia. Even after the Americans were forced to withdraw, Stark's regiment remained the last unit to leave the battlefield, covering the retreat with remarkable courage and military precision. John Stark continued proving himself in the campaigns that followed. He fought alongside George Washington during the daring crossing of the Delaware River and helped secure the stunning victories at Trenton and Princeton, battles that revived the struggling Continental Army and kept the Revolution alive during its darkest days. Yet, despite years of sacrifice and distinguished service, politics overshadowed merit. In early 1777, the Continental Congress promoted another New Hampshire officer to brigadier general instead of Stark. The decision shocked many soldiers who believed Stark's battlefield record far surpassed that of the newly promoted officer. Deeply insulted, Stark resigned his commission rather than serve under political favoritism. But he made one promise before returning home. If New Hampshire were ever threatened by a British invasion, he would answer the call without hesitation. That promise would soon change the course of the entire Revolutionary War. What do you think? Did John Stark make the right decision by resigning on principle instead of accepting an unfair promotion? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this documentary, please like, share, and subscribe to Age Uncovered for more fascinating stories about forgotten heroes, legendary battles, and the remarkable people who shaped world history. Returning home to lead 1,500 citizen soldiers, the retired general who answered his homeland's call. What kind of leader can walk away from the army, return to his farm, and still inspire 1,500 ordinary citizens to follow him into battle? John Stark proved that true leadership is never granted by rank. It is earned through courage, integrity, and trust. In the spring of 1777, John Stark had left the Continental Army after being passed over for promotion. Disappointed by political favoritism, he returned to his farm in New Hampshire, believing his military career had come to an end. Yet even in retirement, he never abandoned the cause of American independence. That moment arrived sooner than anyone expected. During the summer of 1777, British General John Burgoyne launched a massive invasion from Canada, marching south with thousands of British regulars, Hessian mercenaries, loyalists, and Native American allies. His objective was to seize the Hudson River Valley and divide the American colonies in two. As panic spread across New England, New Hampshire desperately turned to the one commander its people trusted above all others, John Stark. Stark agreed to return, but under one remarkable condition. He would not serve under the Continental Army or answer to Congress. He would fight only for the defense of New Hampshire and would command his militia independently. The state accepted. Within just a few days, nearly 1,500 volunteers answered Stark's call. They were not professional soldiers. They were farmers who left their fields, hunters who knew every forest trail, blacksmiths who laid down their hammers, mill workers, trappers, and woodsmen. Most wore ordinary clothing instead of military uniforms. Many carried their own hunting rifles and muskets rather than government-issued weapons. What united them was not military discipline, but complete confidence in John Stark.
They followed him because they knew their character. They knew he never asked others to face dangers he would not face himself. They trusted the man more than the government. That trust became Stark's greatest weapon. Against one of Europe's finest professional armies, these citizen soldiers would soon prove that determination, local knowledge, and inspired leadership could defeat even the most experienced military force. Within days, the hills around Bennington would witness one of the most extraordinary victories of the American Revolution. What do you think was John Stark's greatest strength? His military experience, his leadership, or the trust he inspired among ordinary people? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this documentary, please like, share, and subscribe to Age Uncovered for more fascinating stories about forgotten heroes, legendary battles, and the remarkable people who changed the course of history.
The Battle of Bennington, the day farmers defeated one of Europe's finest armies. Can a group of ordinary farmers, hunters, and blacksmiths defeat highly trained professional soldiers from Europe? In the summer of 1777, most people would have laughed at such an idea. Yet on a hot August afternoon near Bennington, Vermont, John Stark proved that courage, brilliant leadership, and battlefield strategy could overcome even the most experienced army in the world. As British General John Burgoyne marched south from Canada, his invasion force desperately needed horses, food, and military supplies. To seize these resources, he dispatched Lieutenant Colonel Friedrich Baum with nearly 700 Hessian troops, British regulars, loyalists, and Native American scouts to capture the American supply depot at Bennington. Burgoyne expected an easy victory. Instead, he walked into a trap. John Stark carefully studied the enemy's defensive position and designed one of the most brilliant tactical plans of the American Revolution. Rather than launching a costly frontal assault, he divided his militia into several independent columns. One force circled to attack Baum's right flank, another moved behind the enemy to strike from the rear. Additional units targeted loyalist positions, while a small detachment distracted the Hessians from the front. On August 16, 1777, the attack began. The surprise was devastating. Surrounded on every side, Baum's soldiers fought desperately but quickly lost control of the battlefield. Muskets roared, bayonets clashed, and fierce hand-to-hand combat erupted across the hills. Lieutenant Colonel Baum was mortally wounded as his defenses collapsed. Before the battle ended, reinforcements under Lieutenant Colonel Heinrich von Bremen arrived, but John Stark's exhausted militia received timely support from Seth Warner's Green Mountain Boys. Together, they shattered the Second British Force and completed one of the greatest militia victories in American history. The results were astonishing. More than 900 British and Hessian soldiers were killed, wounded, or captured, while the American militia suffered only a fraction of those losses. Burgoyne lost experienced troops, valuable equipment, and precious momentum. Historians widely recognize the Battle of Bennington as one of the decisive turning points that led directly to the British surrender at Saratoga and ultimately encouraged France to enter the war on the American side. Bennington proved a timeless truth. Victory does not always belong to the largest army. Sometimes it belongs to the leader who understands his people, trusts their strengths, and dares to think differently. What do you think was the biggest reason behind John Stark's incredible victory at Bennington? His brilliant strategy, the courage of his militia, or the element of surprise? Share your opinion in the comments below. If you enjoyed this documentary, please like, share, and subscribe to Age Uncovered for more in-depth stories about legendary battles, extraordinary commanders, and the events that changed world history. Bennington changed the course of the American Revolution. Could a single battle fought by ordinary farmers change the fate of an entire nation? At first, the answer seems impossible. Yet on August 16, 1777, the Battle of Bennington proved that courage, leadership, and determination could alter the course of world history. After resigning from the Continental Army, many believed John Stark's military career had ended forever. But when British General John Burgoyne launched his massive invasion from Canada, New Hampshire called upon its greatest frontier commander once again. Stark answered, not for fame or promotion, but to defend his homeland. Leading nearly 1,500 volunteer farmers, hunters, blacksmiths, and woodsmen, Stark faced professional British, Hessian, Loyalist, and Native American forces. Through brilliant planning, surprise attacks, and outstanding battlefield leadership, his citizen soldiers shattered 2 enemy detachments in a single day. Hundreds of British and Hessian troops were killed or captured, while Burgoyne lost desperately needed horses, weapons, food, and military supplies. The consequences reached far beyond Bennington itself. Burgoyne's invasion force was weakened beyond recovery, making it vulnerable only weeks later at the Battle of Saratoga. There, British forces surrendered in one of the greatest turning points of the American Revolutionary War. That victory convinced France that the American cause had a real chance of success. French money, soldiers, weapons, and the powerful French Navy soon entered the conflict, transforming a colonial rebellion into an international war Britain could no longer easily win. Without Bennington, Burgoyne might have captured Albany. Without Saratoga, France might never have entered the war. And without French support, American independence might have remained only a dream. John Stark's victory reminds us that history is not always changed by the largest armies. Sometimes it is changed by ordinary people who refuse to surrender when everything seems impossible. Honor can be taken away by politics, but true character can never be stolen. After the stunning victory at the Battle of Bennington in August 1777, even the Continental Congress could no longer ignore John Stark's extraordinary leadership. Only months earlier, he had resigned from the Continental Army after being passed over for promotion in favor of officers with greater political influence but far less battlefield experience. Many believed his military career had ended forever. Instead, Stark returned when his homeland called, leading nearly 1,500 volunteer farmers, hunters, blacksmiths, and woodsmen to one of the greatest militia victories in American history. Bennington transformed more than the Revolutionary War. It restored John Stark's honor. Congress finally promoted him to brigadier general, recognizing the man whose courage, tactical brilliance, and unwavering devotion had helped save the patriot cause. Yet unlike many military heroes throughout history, Stark never sought fame, wealth, or political office. After helping secure American independence, he quietly returned to his farm, his sawmill, and the peaceful life he had always cherished. More than 3 decades later, in 1809, aging and too weak to attend a reunion of Bennington veterans, Stark sent a brief letter that would become immortal. At its conclusion, he wrote 5 unforgettable words: "Live free or die. Death is not the worst of evils." Those words perfectly captured the principles that had guided his entire life. Freedom, honor, and integrity were worth defending at any cost. Today, "Live free or die" remains the official motto of New Hampshire and one of the most powerful expressions of the American spirit. John Stark's greatest legacy was not only the battles he won, but the values he lived by, proving that true greatness belongs to those who remain faithful to their principles, even when no one is watching. What do you think is more important, winning great battles or living by unshakable principles? Share your thoughts in the comments below. U.S. John Stark's enduring legacy, the retired general who helped save a nation. The forgotten hero who helped secure American independence. When people remember the heroes of the American Revolution, names like George Washington and Benedict Arnold often dominate the conversation. Yet one extraordinary leader quietly changed the course of history before returning home without asking for fame, wealth, or political power. His name was John Stark, the retired general whose leadership helped save a nation. After his stunning victory at the Battle of Bennington in August 1777, John Stark did far more than defeat a British raiding force. His triumph crippled General John Burgoyne's invasion by destroying hundreds of elite Hessian troops, capturing vital supplies, and crushing British morale. Burgoyne's weakened army would soon surrender at Saratoga, a victory widely recognized as the greatest turning point of the American Revolution. That success convinced France to enter the war as America's ally, providing soldiers, money, warships, and international recognition that ultimately made American independence possible. Ironically, after helping secure one of the greatest military victories in American history, Stark never sought power or personal glory. He quietly returned to his farm in New Hampshire, raised his family, managed his sawmill, and lived as an ordinary citizen. Unlike many famous generals throughout history, John Stark believed that true service ended not with rewards, but with responsibility. His humility became as remarkable as his courage on the battlefield. As the decades passed, Stark became the last surviving general of the American Revolution. He lived long enough to watch the United States grow from a fragile collection of colonies into an independent nation. In 1809, unable to attend a reunion of Bennington veterans because of old age, he sent a simple letter containing 5 unforgettable words that would define his legacy forever. "Live free or die. Death is not the worst of evils." Those words later became the official motto of New Hampshire and remain one of the most powerful expressions of freedom in American history. Although history often celebrates louder names, John Stark's legacy reminds us that some of the greatest heroes are those who quietly change history, remain faithful to their principles, and ask for nothing in return. U.S. John Stark's enduring legacy, the retired general who helped save a nation. The forgotten hero who helped secure American independence. When people remember the heroes of the American Revolution, names like George Washington and Benedict Arnold often dominate the conversation. Yet one extraordinary leader quietly changed the course of history before returning home without asking for fame, wealth, or political power. His name was John Stark, the retired general whose leadership helped save a nation. After his stunning victory at the Battle of Bennington in August 1777, John Stark did far more than defeat a British raiding force. His triumph crippled General John Burgoyne's invasion by destroying hundreds of elite Hessian troops, capturing vital supplies, and crushing British morale. Burgoyne's weakened army would soon surrender at Saratoga,
a victory widely recognized as the greatest turning point of the American Revolution. That success convinced France to enter the war as America's ally, providing soldiers, money, warships, and international recognition that ultimately made American independence possible. Ironically, after helping secure one of the greatest military victories in American history, Stark never sought power or personal glory. He quietly returned to his farm in New Hampshire, raised his family, managed his sawmill, and lived as an ordinary citizen. Unlike many famous generals throughout history, John Stark believed that true service ended not with rewards, but with responsibility. His humility became as remarkable as his courage on the battlefield. As the decades passed, Stark became the last surviving general of the American Revolution. He lived long enough to watch the United States grow from a fragile collection of colonies into an independent nation. In 1809, unable to attend a reunion of Bennington veterans because of old age, he sent a simple letter containing 5 unforgettable words that would define his legacy forever. Live free or die. Death is not the worst of evils. Those words later became the official motto of New Hampshire and remain one of the most powerful expressions of freedom in American history. Although history often celebrates louder names, John Stark's legacy reminds us that some of the greatest heroes are those who quietly change history, remain faithful to their principles, and ask for nothing in return. 3. John Stark's legacy teaches us that true greatness is measured not by titles, fame, or political influence, but by character, integrity, and unwavering commitment to doing what is right. He survived captivity, mastered frontier warfare, defended his homeland, resigned when his honor was challenged, and returned without hesitation when his country needed him most. His victory at Bennington became one of the decisive moments that ultimately led to American independence, yet he chose a quiet life instead of seeking recognition. His story reminds us that every generation faces moments requiring courage. For most people today, those battles are not fought with muskets, but with difficult decisions, personal setbacks, workplace challenges, family responsibilities, or dreams that seem impossible to achieve. Like John Stark, we cannot control every circumstance, but we can control our integrity, determination, and willingness to stand for our principles. The greatest lesson from John Stark is simple. Success earned with honor lasts far longer than success achieved through shortcuts or personal ambition. When we remain faithful to our values, lead with humility, and serve something greater than ourselves, our influence continues long after our own journey ends. That is the kind of legacy every person has the opportunity to build. 4. Question for you. In your opinion, what made John Stark a true hero? His courage on the battlefield, his unwavering principles, or his humility after victory? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective may inspire others and help create a meaningful discussion among history enthusiasts around the world. If you enjoyed this documentary, please like, share, and subscribe to Age Uncovered. Your support motivates us to continue creating high-quality documentaries about legendary battles, extraordinary leaders, and the remarkable events that changed the course of world history.